Hello, this is Mishasho greeting you. Today, I present to you a horror story, Golden Coins.
My name is Pedro Alcaraz. I'm 36 years old, and I've spent more than a decade in this world of shadows, gunpowder, and death. I was never a saint, but I wasn't born with a black soul either. Life took care of twisting my path, as it does with so many others. I grew up in a mining town in the mountains, watching my father break his back to extract gold from the earth, only to return home each night with almost empty hands because the bosses paid him a pittance. I always thought there had to be another way to live, until I discovered that the other way was built on blood. I joined El Toro's gang because I saw no other way out. Joining them was like jumping into a raging river. At first, you think you can swim against the current, but soon you realize there's only one direction you can go. El Toro was the boss. A big man with rough hands and a hoarse voice, someone who commanded respect with just a look. With him, there were no second chances. If you hesitated, you died. If you failed, you died. If you betrayed him, well, I don't even want to imagine it. He was our guide, and we were his wolves. In the group, my role was clear, the shooter. My hand never trembled when pulling the trigger. To be honest, I did it with cold precision, as if I had been born for it. I didn't shoot for pleasure, but I didn't feel guilt either. In this business, a conscience is a luxury you can't afford. One of the men who intrigued me the most was Jacinto. He had been with us for about 5 years, but no one knew much about him. He barely spoke, and when he did, his words were short and measured, as if he calculated each one. He was a thin man, his skin toughened by the sun, with dark eyes that seemed to reflect nothing. His skill with a machete was legendary, and his ability to move unseen made him perfect for our raids. The last time I spoke with him about something other than a plan, he told me he had worked as a miner before joining the gang. Gold always demands a price, he once said while sharpening his knife. I didn't fully understand what he meant at the time, but those words stuck with me. It was nighttime when we got the order from El Toro. We were going to attack a well-guarded mine, the biggest hit we'd attempted so far. Some guys had found a rich vein of gold but didn't have the muscle or firepower to protect it. Perfect for us. The road to the mine was long and silent. No one spoke at times like these, each of us was lost in our own thoughts. I, for one, was going over the plan again and again. I knew my role: get in fast, neutralize the guards, secure the area, and cover the men collecting the loot. Just another job for us. We arrived close to midnight. The jungle was calm, broken only by the sound of our boots sinking into the mud. We approached the mining camp, where a few lights illuminated makeshift shelters. From my elevated position, I counted the guards. 4 armed men, plus the workers. Easy. El Toro gave the signal, and then chaos erupted. The first gunshots shattered the silence like a sudden storm. My hands moved almost by instinct, pulling the trigger again and again. One guard fell instantly, then another. Screams and the clang of metal against stone filled the air. It was over in less than 10 minutes. By the time the last bodies hit the ground, we were already inside the mine, searching for gold. For me, it was a familiar scene, but this time, something was different. Jacinto broke away from the group. I saw him drag one of the guards' bodies into a deeper tunnel. I watched as he left it there, half buried among the rubble. It wasn't the first time he did something like that. He always found a way to make a body disappear, but he never explained why. That night, as we stored the loot and headed back to camp, I couldn't get the image out of my head. Jacinto, with that eerie calm that chilled my blood, had buried the guard as if performing some kind of ritual. Something in his expression seemed different, as if he knew something the rest of us didn't. I didn't mention it to anyone. What for? In our group, everyone had their quirks. But something in me awakened a curiosity I had never felt before. Why did he do it? What was the purpose? And most importantly, what was Jacinto hiding? I didn't know it yet, but that question would be the beginning of everything. The image of Jacinto burying that corpse wouldn't leave me alone. It wasn't just the act, it was the way he did it, as if following a secret routine, a ritual that no one else was meant to understand. I decided I couldn't let it go. The next opportunity came soon. We had raided a small mining camp, a quick and easy operation. The guards barely put up a fight, dropping their weapons and fleeing into the jungle. We finished the job with efficiency and without much trouble. But, as always, Jacinto strayed from the group, dragging one of the miners' bodies toward an abandoned tunnel. This time, I didn't lose sight of him. When everyone returned to camp with the loot, I made an excuse to stay behind. I hid in the shadows near the tunnel and waited. The moon was high when it happened. At first, I saw nothing. The corpse was exactly where Jacinto had left it, half buried under rubble and dust. Time passed slowly, and the air was so thick it felt like it was crushing my chest. Then, I heard it. A low sound, almost a whisper, like something slithering in the darkness. A shiver ran down my spine. I wanted to move, but my body refused to obey. And then, the shadow appeared. It was impossible not to see it. It was big, shapeless, and it moved with intent. This was no ordinary shadow, it glowed faintly, as if its darkness held a slow, malevolent fire. It slid across the ground, approaching the corpse with an unsettling fluidity that made me hold my breath. When it reached the body, it stopped for a moment, as if studying it. And then it began to devour it. There's no other way to describe it. I heard the first bite, a dry crunch, like branches snapping under a heavy boot. Then came the wet, tearing sound of flesh being ripped apart, followed by a nauseating noise, like someone chewing with brutal force. I felt like I was going to vomit. The shadow had no physical form, but its movements were clear. It opened and closed, tearing chunks of flesh with each motion. The bones cracked like glass, and the sound was so intense it felt like it was inside my head. I wanted to close my eyes, but I couldn't look away. The shadow devoured everything, skin, flesh, bones. The only thing left was a dark dust, almost like ashes, mixed with the dirt of the mine. Then Jacinto arrived. I saw him enter the tunnel with his lantern, walking with an eerie calmness. He seemed to know exactly what he was going to find. He stopped at the spot where the body had been and started digging through the dust with his hands. What he pulled out left me speechless. It was a gold coin. It shone with an unnatural intensity, as if it had just come out of a furnace. Jacinto held it up to the light, inspecting it carefully, then put it in his pocket with the same indifference as someone pocketing an ordinary stone. I remained in my hiding place, frozen, trying to comprehend what I had just witnessed. What was that shadow? Why did it devour the dead? What connection did it have with Jacinto? When Jacinto left the tunnel, he disappeared into the night, unaware of my presence. I was the only one left, clutching the ground, trembling, and realizing that there was something in this world I did not understand, something dark and ancient that seemed to obey Jacinto. Things started falling apart soon after that night. Jacinto continued acting as if nothing had happened, while I couldn't erase the image of the shadow devouring that corpse from my mind. Every time we crossed paths, I felt like he knew, like he could read in my eyes that I had discovered his secret. The tension reached its breaking point during our last operation. We had planned to ambush a group of miners in a narrow mountain pass. The intel was solid, they were transporting valuable minerals and wouldn't have reinforcements nearby. But something went wrong. Instead of miners, we walked straight into a trap. They were waiting for us. The moment we came down from the rocks, gunfire erupted from every direction. It was absolute chaos. I watched our men fall one by one. Bullets whizzed through the air, screams blended with the echoes of gunfire, and blood stained the earth. I ran toward a crack in the rock, desperately searching for cover. When I turned back, I only saw Jacinto running behind me. The rest of the group had been annihilated. We took refuge in a small cave, panting and covered in dust. I don't know if it was the near-death experience or the adrenaline coursing through my veins, but I pulled out my gun and aimed it straight at his face. "You didn't sell us out, did you, Jacinto? You just wanted to give that thing more bodies." "Talk, Jacinto," I snapped, my fingers steady on the trigger. "What the hell is wrong with you, Pedro?" "What are you doing?" he replied, surprised but not scared. "The shadow. What I saw that night in the tunnel. I want to know what it is. Everything. Now." For a moment, I thought he was going to deny everything, swear I was crazy. But he didn't. Instead, he sighed and looked at me, tired, as if he had been waiting for someone to ask him for an explanation. "All right, Pedro. I'll tell you, but you won't like what you hear." I stayed silent, waiting. "It's a lost soul," Jacinto began, his voice low and measured. "One condemned to devour human flesh to atone for some sin it committed in life. I don't know exactly who it was or what it did, but that thing, it's not from this world." My hand trembled slightly, but I didn't lower the gun. "How do you know?" I asked. "I found out by accident. Years ago, I buried a guy in a specific place, in a remote corner of a mine. I had killed before, but this time, something happened. When I came back, the corpse was gone, and in its place, I found a gold coin. It shone like the devil himself." He paused, staring at the ground as if reliving that moment. "Since then, I've been using that thing. If I leave a body in the right spot, it appears, devours it, and always leaves a payment, a coin. It's like it's grateful for the meal." His confession sent chills through me. I had been afraid before, but this was different. It was as if the air itself had grown heavy with the weight of his words. "And you never thought about stopping?" I asked, almost in disbelief. "And stop getting those coins," he replied with a cynical smile. "Don't talk to me about morality, Pedro. We all kill for something." That was enough for me. Without another word, I pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the cave, and Jacinto fell to the ground, his face frozen in a mix of surprise and resignation. I dragged him out of the cave, my hands trembling and my heart pounding. I knew what I had to do. I buried him in the exact place he had pointed out before, the same spot where he had always left bodies to feed the shadow. Then I hid, waiting. The moon was high when it appeared again. The shadow, half man and half serpent, emerged from the darkness with the same terrifying fluidity I remembered. It moved toward Jacinto's grave and began to dig with precise movements. When the body was exposed, the feast began. I heard the bites, the crunching of bones, the tearing of flesh. I didn't look away, even though the horror consumed me from within. When everything was over, the creature disappeared, leaving behind only dust and something else. I stepped out of my hiding place, my heart pounding. There, among the ashes, lay a gold coin. I picked it up with trembling hands, feeling its warmth and weight. It gleamed with that unnatural intensity, as if it held a fragment of hell itself. At that moment, I understood that Jacinto had been right. And I also realized something else, that gold, so bright and tempting, was cursed. But in the dark and ruthless world we lived in, what else could possibly matter? After that night, everything changed forever. What I did to Jacinto haunted me for weeks, but the coin I had taken wouldn't let me go. I kept it in my pocket, running my fingers over its surface when no one was looking. Its glow was hypnotic, as if it held an ancient secret, a promise of wealth I couldn't ignore. At first, I tried to convince myself that I would never do it again. But the world I knew was merciless, and easy money always had a way of seducing the desperate. The first time I buried another body was almost accidental. During a raid, one of the guards fell dead, and without thinking too much, I took him to that exact place. I waited, hidden in the shadows, the body buried beneath the damp earth. The shadow came as always, slithering, creeping, devouring with that infernal noise I would never forget. And in the end, there it was, another coin. That second gold confirmed what I already knew, there was no escape. I began justifying it. The ones I buried were already dead, victims of our work. I was just taking advantage of the opportunity. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The shadow didn't just consume bodies, it devoured something inside me, something I could never get back. Every time I touched one of those coins, I felt a strange warmth. It was addictive. I promised myself I wouldn't let it control me, that I would only do it when it was necessary. But promises are easy to break when gold is so close. Over time, I developed a system. Whenever we could, I picked someone, a guard, a worker, anyone who could disappear without raising suspicion. I took them to the place, left them for the shadow, and collected my payment. The coins began to pile up. I didn't know what I would do with them, but I couldn't let them go. It was as if they had belonged to me before I even found them. I never developed a taste for killing. Unlike Jacinto, I didn't enjoy the process. But every time I touched the gold left behind by that creature, something inside me changed. The desire grew, an unquenchable hunger. I wanted more. Now I know I'm trapped, just like Jacinto was. Maybe one day, someone will point a gun at me and force me to reveal my secret. And when that happens, I just hope they have the courage to do what I cannot, to break this cursed cycle. Until then, the gold keeps shining, and I keep searching for the next victim. Because once you know the weight of the gold that shadow leaves behind, you can never turn back.
Alright, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and hit the bell to activate notifications. I'm Mishasho. See you next time.
The moon hides behind the clouds, casting an eerie glow. Footsteps echo in the silence, sending shivers down your spine. Every breath is a battle, fear gripping at your soul. In this haunted labyrinth where nightmares take control. Welcome to the night.